February 24, 1986. A successful nurse lies dead in her Van Nuys condominium, beaten and shot 3 times. The LAPD calls it a botched burglary. But what they don't know is that the killer is sitting in roll call at a police station just miles away, badge gleaming, gun holstered, ready for another day of serving and protecting the community. For over 2 decades, one father refused to give up. He knew exactly who killed his daughter. He tried telling the police, but they wouldn't listen. They told him he watched too much television. What he didn't know was that his daughter's killer had access to the case files, potentially tampering with evidence and watching the investigation from the inside. This is the case of Sherri Rasmussen, a 29-year-old critical care nurse whose life was cut short by someone she had confronted just months before her death. It's a case that exposes the dangerous intersection of unrequited love and police authority, and reveals how a badge can become both weapon and shield. By the time this case was solved in 2009, DNA technology had advanced far enough to identify the killer from a bite mark left on the victim's arm. The results would shock the Los Angeles Police Department to its core. This is a chilling true crime story that reads like a psychological thriller, complete with evidence tampering, police corruption, and a cold case that nearly became the perfect murder. The twists in this case will leave you questioning everything you think you know about police investigations, and the most recent developments from 2024 and 2025 show the story is far from over. Let's go back to 1978, UCLA campus. John Ruetten, a mechanical engineering student from San Diego, meets Stephanie Lazarus, a political science and sociology major from Simi Valley. They both live in Dykstra Hall, and what starts as casual dating quickly becomes something much more serious for Stephanie than for John. Their friends noticed the imbalance immediately. While John viewed their relationship as casual college dating, what he later described as necking and fooling around, Stephanie was deeply invested. She would steal his clothes while he showered and even photograph him in his underwear while he slept. These weren't cute girlfriend pranks. They were early warning signs of obsessive behavior. Both were athletes. Stephanie played on UCLA's junior varsity women's basketball team, known for her aggressive, physical defensive play. This competitive, tenacious nature became a defining characteristic that followed her throughout her life. After John graduated in 1981, their relationship continued sporadically. They had sex for the first time after his graduation and saw each other 2 or 3 times a month over the next few years. John accepted a position with Data Products, a computer peripherals company, while Stephanie graduated a year later. Initially, Stephanie considered law school and worked briefly as a filing clerk at a law firm. But she realized the legal profession wasn't for her. Instead, she made a decision that would prove fatally significant. She joined the LAPD. The timing was perfect for her application. The LAPD was actively recruiting women following a sex discrimination lawsuit from former female officers. Stephanie completed a special 8-week pre-academy training program and graduated as a uniformed officer in 1983. Her police academy classmates remembered her tenacity during physical combat training, especially in exercises involving weapon retention. During training, she described John as her college boyfriend, and he was even her date to Data Products' 1983 Christmas party. But here's the crucial detail: John never considered Stephanie his girlfriend. Years later, he testified that between 1981 and 1984, they had sex 20 to 30 times. But in his mind, they were never in an official relationship. This fundamental disconnect in how they viewed their connection set the stage for tragedy. Upon graduation from the police academy, Stephanie moved to a Granada Hills condo and made a purchase that would become central to our story. She bought a .38 caliber revolver through the department as her backup firearm. Meanwhile, John's life was about to change dramatically. At a June 1984 party, he met Sherri Rasmussen, and everything shifted. Sherri Rasmussen was everything Stephanie Lazarus wasn't: academically brilliant, professionally accomplished, and completely secure in who she was. Born in Walla Walla, Washington, and raised in Arizona, Sherri was gifted enough to graduate from Thunderbird Adventist Academy and begin college at La Sierra University at just 16 years old. After her freshman year, she transferred to Loma Linda University's prestigious nursing program. This wasn't just any nursing program. Loma Linda was known for producing the best critical care nurses in the region. Sherri excelled, earning her nursing degree and then a master's in nursing from UCLA in 1980. Her career trajectory was remarkable. She worked at UCLA Medical Center's coronary care unit before being promoted to head nurse of UCLA's coronary care and observation unit. She was also appointed as an unpaid assistant clinical professor of nursing, teaching the next generation of nurses. By her late 20s, Sherri had become the director of nursing at Glendale Adventist Medical Center. Her father, Nels Rasmussen, was so proud of his daughter's success that he bought her a condo in Van Nuys with a drive-in garage, specifically so she wouldn't have to walk along the street after working late shifts. Sherri paid him rent equal to his mortgage payment, a testament to both her independence and their close relationship. When Sherri met John at that June 1984 party, it was different from his previous relationships. This wasn't casual dating, this was serious, committed love. They began planning a future together almost immediately. But there was someone watching from the shadows, someone who wasn't ready to let John go. Stephanie's first assignment as an LAPD officer was Hollywood Division, notorious for high crime rates and low morale. The division was reeling from the Hollywood burglars scandal, where 14 officers were ultimately fired after 2 were prosecuted for burglarizing video stores while on duty. Chief Daryl Gates was personally overseeing internal affairs investigations, later writing that Hollywood had an almost carnival atmosphere that suggests here anything goes. In this toxic environment, Stephanie learned the unwritten rules of police culture. Her diary from this period shows her increasingly identifying with the LAPD above all else. Officers lived by the code: admit nothing, deny everything, demand proof. She faced her own challenges, including sexual harassment from her training officer, James Tomer, who regularly propositioned her. When she refused, rumors spread that she was a lesbian. Stephanie's colleagues nicknamed her Spazarus behind her back when she got angry, another red flag about her emotional regulation. Despite these workplace issues, Stephanie excelled professionally. After a year on probation, she was promoted and transferred to the quieter Devonshire Division in March 1985, covering Northridge, Chatsworth, and Granada Hills. She rented out the spare bedroom in her condo to a fellow officer. But her personal life was falling apart. In May 1985, Stephanie threw John a surprise 25th birthday party, completely unaware that he had been dating Sherri seriously. When she met Sherri for the first time at this party, something shifted inside her. A month later, Stephanie learned that John and Sherri had become engaged. Her diary entry from that day is chilling in its rawness. "I really don't feel like working. I found out that John is getting married. My concentration is like -10. That night, she woke up her fellow officer roommate to talk about her heartbreak. He later testified that he had never seen her cry until that moment. But tears quickly turned to action. Shortly before John moved in with Sherri, Stephanie visited his condo. They had sex, what John later called giving her closure. He never told Sherri about this encounter, a decision that would haunt him forever. But Stephanie wasn't getting closure. She was getting more desperate. In August 1985, she wrote to John's mother, "I'm truly in love with John and the past year has really torn me up. I wish it didn't end the way it did, and I don't think I'll ever understand his decision." What happened next should have been a wake-up call for everyone involved. Sometime in July or August 1985, on her day off, Stephanie visited Sherri at Glendale Adventist Medical Center. She deliberately dressed provocatively, tight short shorts and a tank top, and delivered a message that was both threat and promise. "John and I are still having sex," she told Sherri. "When your marriage fails, I'll be there to pick up the pieces." Sherri's response was firm and direct. "Your services won't be needed." But Stephanie's parting words were chilling. "If I can't have John, no one else will. Including you." Think about this for a moment. An armed police officer had just made a direct threat against the fiancé of her ex-lover. But Sherri, perhaps not fully grasping the danger she was in, didn't report the incident to hospital security. She did, however, tell her father and confronted John when he came home from work. John admitted to the affair and asked for forgiveness, but he took no action to prevent further contact with Stephanie. From his perspective, any relationship with her was long over. He had no idea that for Stephanie, it was just beginning to heat up. John and Sherri married in November 1985 as planned, but Sherri's concerns about Stephanie persisted. The couple had been receiving hang-up calls since John moved in with her. Before leaving on their honeymoon, they installed a burglar alarm in their condo. Sherri set the code as 11/23, their wedding anniversary. A friend warned her this was a poor choice, but Sherri couldn't have imagined that someone with access to police databases might be watching their every move. By late 1985, it appeared to friends and co-workers that Stephanie was moving on. She began working part-time security at Los Angeles Pierce College, dated a fitness instructor and a TV news cameraman, and even drafted a personal ad in her diary. But appearances were deceiving. In January 1986, Stephanie brought her skis to John and Sherri's condo, asking John to wax them. Despite Sherri's objections, he complied. Sherri found the visit strange, especially since Stephanie was dressed in flattering workout clothes. After Stephanie left, Sherri asked her husband point-blank if their relationship was truly over. John convinced her they were just friends. When Sherri asked him not to drop the skis off at Stephanie's apartment, he agreed. But a few days later, Stephanie returned to pick up the skis herself. She was in uniform and armed. Let that sink in. An armed police officer was making unnecessary visits to the home of the woman she had threatened months earlier. The encounters became more brazen. On another morning in January, after John had left for work, Sherri found Stephanie in their living room, again in uniform. When firmly asked to leave, she did, but the message was clear: she could get into their home whenever she wanted. Sherri told her father about this incident but not John, and she didn't believe reporting it to police would be effective. After all, Stephanie was the police. During a visit to her parents in Tucson in early February, Sherri confided her worst fears to her father. She believed Stephanie was stalking her on the street, sometimes disguising herself as a young man. Nels Rasmussen tried to convince John to move to Arizona, assuring him he could get him an engineering position at Hughes Aircraft through his connections. But it was too late. Stephanie's obsession had reached a boiling point, and she was about to cross the line from stalking to murder. On February 14, 1986, Lazarus's roommate moved out of their shared condo. A week later, on February 23rd, Rutan inadvertently left the front door of his condo unlocked during a friend's visit. The stage was set for tragedy. February 24th began like any other Monday. Rutan left for work at Micropolis around 7:20 a.m. Rasmussen had been scheduled to give a presentation at the hospital but told her husband she might call in sick, citing a back injury from aerobics class the previous day. At 9:45 a.m., a neighbor noticed the Rutan's garage door was open with no car visible. Around 10 a.m., Rutan began making the first of several unanswered calls home throughout the day. He found it strange that the answering machine didn't pick up. They always turned it on when leaving the condo empty. At noon, two men who appeared to be gardeners found Rasmussen's purse and brought it to a neighbor. Around 12:30 p.m., a maid cleaning a nearby unit heard what sounded like two people fighting, then something falling. She assumed it was a domestic dispute and didn't call police. When Rutan returned home that evening, he found broken glass on the driveway and Rasmussen's BMW missing. Inside the condo, he discovered a scene of violence that would haunt him forever. Sherri Rasmussen lay dead on the living room floor, shot 3 times. The physical evidence tells a story of prolonged, brutal violence. Sherri, who was 6 feet tall, had a large frame, and was in excellent physical shape, fought back fiercely. There were signs of a massive struggle throughout the condo: a broken porcelain vase, a toppled credenza, and most significantly, a bloody handprint next to the burglar alarm's panic button. Sherri had defensive wounds and a bruise on her face from being struck with the gun's muzzle. Someone had attempted to bind her with cord. The killer had fired the gun through a quilted blanket to muffle the sound, then shot Sherri 3 times in the chest at close range. Most critically, investigators found a bite mark on Rasmussen's arm and collected a DNA sample from it, evidence that would remain dormant for over 20 years and eventually solve the case. LAPD detectives arrived at the scene and quickly concluded that Rasmussen had been killed during a botched burglary. Her attire, a bathrobe, nightgown, and underwear, suggested she wasn't expecting visitors. Electronic equipment was stacked at the base of the stairs as if the burglar had been interrupted while collecting items to steal. But lead detective Lyle Mayer missed crucial red flags that pointed away from a random break-in. The crime had several atypical elements for a burglary. It was unusual for burglars to steal a car after a crime. They usually brought their own vehicle. The bite mark was also unusual, as bites during struggles are far more commonly inflicted by women, while most burglars are men. Nels and Loretta Rasmussen immediately told Detective Mayer about Lazarus's harassment campaign against their daughter. They watched him make a note of it. Rutan also mentioned Lazarus during a second interview, though he omitted crucial details about their final sexual encounter and her threats to Rasmussen. But Mayer dismissed the Lazarus angle entirely. When Nels Rasmussen pressed the issue, Mayer told him there's nothing there. The detective remained focused on the burglary theory, especially after a similar break-in occurred in the same area involving suspects with a .38 caliber weapon, the same type used to kill Rasmussen. The autopsy revealed that all 3 bullets inflicted fatal wounds. 15 separate injuries were noted on Rasmussen's face, suggesting prolonged, brutal violence inconsistent with a quick burglary gone wrong. 11 days after the murder, Rasmussen's BMW was found unlocked with keys in the ignition, roughly 2 miles from the condo. Despite finding possible bloodstains and unidentified fingerprints in the car, the investigation stalled. For over 2 decades, the case remained cold. The LAPD, overwhelmed by gang violence and the crack epidemic, couldn't devote resources to what they believed was a solved case with unknown perpetrators still at large. The Rasmussens never gave up. They offered rewards, held news conferences, and repeatedly contacted detectives who often hung up on them or put them on indefinite hold. Nels Rasmussen wrote to Chief Daryl Gates about the Lazarus connection but was told he watched too much television. In 1988, the family approached true crime writer and Rule about writing a book on the case. Rule was initially interested, but after her retired LAPD detective friend looked into it, she backed out, saying the case was too hot to handle. John briefly returned to the condo but moved out after a month when the psychological and financial burden became too much. He took a leave of absence from work and moved back with his parents in San Diego. In one telling detail, John called Detective Mayer asking if he was absolutely sure there was no evidence linking Stephanie to his wife's death. Meanwhile, Stephanie was moving on with her life. She briefly reunited with John on a 1989 Hawaii vacation and continued having occasional sexual encounters with him over the next 2 years. She also continued her LAPD career, even starting her own private investigation firm called Unique Investigations. She was promoted to detective in 1994, married a fellow officer, and adopted a daughter. Significantly, she was assigned to the Van Nuys division, where the Rasmussen murder files were kept, for 2 separate periods during the 1990s. She was also assigned to internal affairs for a year, giving her insight into how investigations could be manipulated or derailed. In 1993, when Nels Rasmussen offered to pay for DNA testing on the evidence, he was told police needed a suspect first, a catch-22 that would delay justice for another 15 years. In March 2008, Van Nuys homicide detective Jim Nuttall found a box with 2 cold case files left near his desk. Someone, it's never been determined who, wanted the Rasmussen case reopened. Nuttall and his partner Pete Barba immediately saw what the original investigators had missed. This wasn't a burglary, it was a staged crime scene designed to throw police off the trail. The evidence that convinced them: Rasmussen's jewelry box sat untouched in plain view on her dresser. The condo was in the middle of a gated complex where burglars would easily be observed. The front door showed no signs of forced entry despite having an alarm warning sticker. Most tellingly, the stack of stereo equipment at the base of the stairs was too neat. If there had been a struggle down the staircase, that equipment would have been scattered. The forensics supported their theory. A bloody thumbprint on the stereo equipment had no fingerprint pattern, suggesting the person was wearing gloves. But the blood was Rasmussen's, meaning the equipment was stacked after she was killed to stage the burglary scene. When they reviewed the case files, they developed a list of 5 female suspects based on the DNA evidence. Nuttall was shocked to learn that one of them, Stephanie Lazarus, was not only still alive but was now a high-ranking LAPD detective working art theft cases. The detectives faced a delicate situation. They had to investigate a fellow officer without alerting her or her husband, who also worked as a detective in Van Nuys. They referred to Lazarus only as Number 5 and worked after hours or behind closed doors. Their investigation revealed damning evidence. Records showed Lazarus owned a Smith & Wesson Model .38 caliber revolver, the same type used in the murder. 13 days after Rasmussen's death, Lazarus reported the gun stolen to Santa Monica police, though she failed to report it to her own department's armorer as required by policy. The timing was perfect for their theory. Lazarus was off duty the day of the murder. As experienced detectives, Nuttall and Barba theorized how a police officer would commit murder, use a backup gun rather than a duty weapon, stage the scene to look like a burglary, and do it on a day off to avoid questions about whereabouts. When they needed DNA evidence to confirm their suspicions, they used a technique that required no warrant. While off-duty, Lazarus discarded a cup at a Simi Valley Costco. Police retrieved it, and the DNA sample matched the bite mark on Sherri Rasmussen's arm perfectly. After 23 years, they finally had their killer. Lazarus was arrested in June 2009 in a carefully orchestrated operation. She was called to Parker Center under the pretense of discussing an art theft case. Once inside, and after surrendering her weapon to enter the secure facility, detectives revealed the real reason for the meeting. During the interview, Lazarus claimed to remember little about the case due to the passage of time, but gradually revealed more knowledge than she should have possessed, including details about her visits to the Rutan condo and Rasmussen's workplace. When DNA evidence was mentioned and samples requested, Lazarus declined and left the room, where she was immediately arrested. Searches of her home revealed her diary from the 1980s, documenting her obsession with Rutan and despair over his engagement to Rasmussen. Her computer showed she had searched for Rutan's name online multiple times in the late 1990s. The trial in 2012 attracted massive media attention. The prosecution argued jealousy as the motive, while the defense attempted to revive the original burglary theory and challenge the DNA evidence. After several days of deliberation, the jury convicted Lazarus of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 27 years to life in prison. The case didn't end with the conviction. Evidence suggests that Lazarus may have tampered with the original case files during her assignments at Van Nuys in the 1990s. Key evidence was missing, interview transcripts were altered or disappeared, and witness statements contained inconsistencies that couldn't be explained by the passage of time. In November 2023, after maintaining her innocence for over a decade, Lazarus finally confessed to the murder during a parole hearing. She admitted, "It makes me sick to this day that I took an oath to protect and serve people, and I took Sherri Rasmussen's life from her, a nurse." She described calling the Rutan home that morning, becoming enraged when Rasmussen answered instead of Rutan, and going to the condo with rope and her gun, planning to tie up Rasmussen if necessary. After what she called a hellacious bar fight, she bound and shot Rasmussen. Initially, a parole panel recommended her release, but the full board rescinded this decision in October 2024. In 2025, another parole request was denied, with commissioners noting discrepancies between her account and the physical evidence. Lazarus will be eligible for parole again in 2028. The Sherri Rasmussen case stands as a chilling reminder that those sworn to protect us can sometimes be the ones we need protection from. It exposes how authority can be weaponized, evidence can be manipulated, and justice can be delayed but never truly denied. The most recent parole hearing in 2025 revealed new details about the crime that contradict Stephanie's 2023 confession. Commissioner Kevin Chappell noted that the minimal DNA evidence didn't support her claim of a prolonged struggle. Was she still lying about details of the murder even while confessing? This case also highlights the crucial importance of DNA evidence in solving cold cases and the danger of tunnel vision in investigations. Had detectives in 1986 taken Nels Rasmussen's concerns about Stephanie Lazarus seriously, Sherri might still be alive today. It raises so many troubling questions that extend far beyond a single murder. How many other cases might have been compromised by officers with access to evidence? What safeguards exist to prevent police officers from investigating crimes they might be connected to? And here's the question that keeps me up at night. If it took 23 years to solve this case with clear DNA evidence and an obvious suspect, how many other murders committed by police officers are still unsolved? What aspects of this case disturb you most? The initial police dismissal of obvious suspect? The potential evidence tampering? Or the fact that it took over 2 decades to bring a killer to justice? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this case as compelling as I did, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into true crime cases that shock the world. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest investigations into the dark side of human nature. Share this video with anyone who believes in justice, no matter how long it takes to achieve. What other cold cases would you like me to investigate? Drop your suggestions below. And remember, the truth always finds a way to surface, even when powerful people try to bury it. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, stay aware.